and in the hands of all genuine judges and policemen all over the world. You know, sit up, take notice, get researching, and round up the suspects and interview them. You know, interview the owner of the Times newspaper, you know, who lives in New York. Interview the, I'd say interview pretty much anyone with $1 trillion, you know, worth of wealth in their bank balance, somewhere off some, you know, desert island of pirates. Okay, so that's option 4, that it was a criminal gang who did this, and they did it because they thought they were doing governments a favour. You know, governments didn't need to know this. Johnson hasn't got a clue who did this, but it's probably our lot. And they might, for all we know, have got help from bioweapons experts from Porton down on, who moonlit, who went off to some secret lab in wherever. You know, like that James Bond movie where he goes and tracks the villain down to his lair in, I think, Morocco, and has to fight to prevent him making some, you know, fatal weapon. I mean, that's normally the plot in James Bond stuff. There is an international criminal gang, and yeah, and it's operating for sheer profit. One question I have about that is, well, who would be so stupid as to think that this kind of level of coronavirus attack would be good news for anybody? Well, maybe they are stupid. You see, evil people are actually stupid. This is the slim chance we have for planetary survival. Intelligence is only normally accompanying goodness. This was Socrates' point. You know, virtue and knowledge go together. So the more virtuous you become, the more knowledgeable. This is Buddha's point. Follow the ethical path. You'll reach Buddhahood. You'll reach cosmic, crystalline, omniscient intellect, which is what the Buddhi means. You know, the faculty to intellect, in the sense of it being a verb. And that only comes with virtue. People that don't do the virtue thing might be clever, like Goebbels or Hitler or Stalin. They might be clever, streetwise, Mao's another, but they weren't good. And ultimately, their legacy is corrupt and suspect. So if it was a criminal gang that did this, then they may well be very clever, but they're not good people. And therefore they need to be prosecuted and tracked and found out, and Interpol should be on this. Okay. I explore what their motivations might have been. I mean, one wacky idea is that it might be a criminal gang run by some sort of crazy, charismatic, deep green guy, like in a James Bond movie, who thinks he's helping the world by culling humanity. I seem to recall there was an episode of there's a sort of crime thriller movie that you know, set in London. It's very popular. I can't remember its name. And you know, this is a plot that's been around. The deep green eco-terrorist who thinks he's going to help the world by killing off a few million people. Well, maybe that's the kind of criminal gang. They think they're the good guys up against the evil governments, and so they're culling off humanity to save the whale, save the bat, green the planet. Discuss, you know. That's a bit like the deep green argument we looked at in 1B, where people are saying, well, it's not necessarily such a bad thing. Okay, a few thousand people are going to die, 100,000, but hey, pollution's down, you know, more rainforest, etc. So, you know, leaping up to option 4 is that actually it was deliberate by an eco-warriors gang, sort of rainbow warrior Mark V with teeth, who've now got bioweapons. I don't know which of these is true, so I suspend judgment. I'm just saying, logically, as a philosopher, trying to apply logic here, that is a possibility. Because I mean, one hears some disturbing rhetoric from some deep greens that, you know, they prefer animals to people, basically. I know people that much prefer bats to human beings. And so it becomes an anti-humanist ideology. This sort of deep green becomes a bit wacky and anti-humanist. And God knows, maybe one of those with a genius, PhD in biology from Oxford has spent too long in the jungles and invented this attack. It's just a theory, a speculation. Now we're going up the level of wackiness, right? Forgive me for this, but number 5 it is a wacky criminal gang, only this time it's operated by supernatural forces. So the first one is it's just like normal, naughty, evil people. The 5th option, it's supernatural forces we're up against. So, and this argument is it's the extraterrestrial lot. Now, I'm sorry to have to raise that as an issue in polite society because obviously it's not discussed very often in academia, etc. But, as a scholar of peace and global affairs, I've been very interested in the history of UFOs and extraterrestrial sightings because my PhD is on late 20th century history, so that's when UFOs took off. And I've always been interested in research into it. And I have a very open mind, like Jacques Vallée, the French ufologist, what's the truth behind all this? I've listened to lots of talks, I've met people that were researching this. I corresponded with a lord who was in the UK Parliament who was interested in it. I've heard talks from the guy who worked for the MOD for Britain, who was in charge of researching UFO reports. Timothy Good, he gave a lecture once at a conference I was at, and I spoke to him afterwards. He wrote a very good book called Above Top Secret. And he said he was the man in the MOD that these reports would come onto his desk, and he then had to evaluate them and often go and visit and take the witness statements. And he said, I think in his lecture, he said about 70% of these reports can be explained away. They were, freaks of weather, clouds, weather balloons, hallucinations, or made up, or whatever. There was some rational explanation for them. But I think he said maybe it was 10% of these reports could not be explained and seemed to be down to genuine, extraterrestrial origin. And that's interesting, because over a long time that accumulates that figure. So, and similar sightings have been held all over the world, in America and Latin America and Russia and etc. etc. So, what's behind it? Well, many people, this is their passion, their big business. They make a living researching and writing books and filming this stuff, and they claim, and there's a whole bunch of people that have now got into this spiritually, ever since the work by John Mack, who was a psychiatrist at Harvard, who researched people who claimed to have been abductees. John Mack was a very interesting man. I didn't meet him, but I knew him. We corresponded. Because initially he was interested in the psychological fear of nuclear annihilation in the early 80s, which was a big fear for people, that we were going to die as a planet, through nuclear war. And that was one of the reasons we managed to get the long-range missiles banned, and Reagan and Gorbachev to sign a peace treaty, which tragically this man Trump is now reneging on. He seems to have just lost some aspects of his intellectual faculties, and his moral faculties mainly. But that fear of nuclear annihilation was something that John Mack researched, and then he went on and he interviewed people who had a similar paranoid fear of aliens and being abducted, and he did research, and again he said, it couldn't be explained away. This wasn't a mass hallucination. It wasn't just weird people making stuff up or smoking too much cannabis. These were genuine people with genuine fears and experiences. He was threatened with being sacked from Harvard for doing that research because it was entering terrain that is not allowed to be thought. But he won the case. As a professor, he had the right of freedom of academic freedom, which I claim too. I mean, all genuine academics should exercise that freedom with caution, but we have to exercise it. And so that's why I'm saying, option 5 is, this was a bioterrorist attack on humanity as a whole by an advanced extraterrestrial alien civilization that has got hold of these weapons and is really enjoying watching us, because we are possibly going down as a human civilization. The argument would be that this is part of the colonization plan, like in the movie, Independence Day. So within, well, you can see how the movie might end, right? It's a horrifying and scary thought. But of course the argument, and this is being discussed on ufology sites all over the world, this is not just me saying this, this is millions and millions of people are saying this, that they're laughing because humanity is showing utter disunity. Because of the stupidity and pomposity of our political leaders and their lack of veracity, the Americans, the Chinese, all the rest, are all accusing each other and, failing to cooperate, which is the one thing that we can do, which we could defeat if it is, number 5, if it is an alien invasion pre-attack. The one way we can defeat this is with the power of love. And that means we have to start loving each other as a planet, loving our enemies. The Americans and the Iranians have to make up. The Israelis have to have, mint tea with the Palestinians and make up. And even Hamas have to kind of put the guns down and come to the restaurant for civilized discussion of peace. And everyone else on the planet, do you remember, I think in Independence Day at the end, there's those screens where people are so relieved and they're saved, and it shows all the places in the world. Well, we need that now, if we're going to survive. But discuss. I'm just hypothesizing at this point, right? Then we come to number 6, which is the weirdest of all the options, probably, for normal people. Philosophers, we do weird, it's fine. Academics do weird. So this theory is called the devil theory. The devil theory is believed by probably about 1 billion people in the world at the moment. I've put numbers beside the people that believe these theories. The UFO theory, well, I think I reckon about half. So at least 500,000, possibly more. The devil theory is technically believed in by at least 1 billion and probably more, because all Islam, all Christianity, most Judaism, and some other kind of, and all Zoroastrianism, they all believe in this thing called the devil. And they believe that the devil is a very powerful force in history and is always plotting humanity's downfall, and is still a power on the loose. It hasn't been chained up by God. God, in some obscure reason, has given the power to the devil to try and bring us down. And all throughout history, this struggle has been going on. And every now and then, God sends a great prophet or saint to defeat the devil, but it only kind of half happens. So, Moses was sent, Zoroaster was sent, Jesus was sent, Muhammad was sent. Later Mahdi came along, and so on. And they sort of half succeed, but they don't quite succeed because evil and suffering still keep going on. So now it's like the Messiah's going to do it. The Seisham, the Zoroastrians say, who's going to be the Messiah. And the Jews, sort of, well-educated, intelligent rabbis who've done proper studies in Judaism would probably say the devil is, a sort of archetypal, mythic, collective memory. I mean, this was Freud's position. But there is a force for evil and ignorance, but it's kind of like Plato said, it's mostly an ignorance theory. There isn't an active devil out there trying to get us. But some Jews probably would say that. It depends on the kind of Judaism and also the kind of Islam and the kind of Christianity. Not all believe in an actual devil figure. and I got very interested in this when I was doing research on the Cathars, because the Cathars do believe in an actual devil, and they believe that that devil actually pretty much runs this world and is behind a lot of the power structures we see, including even, you know, tragically, the official churches, some of the monarchies, etc. The devil's infiltrated. And, you know, the pure, the elect, the Cathar, are very few and far between. There aren't many of us. Meanwhile, the devil's taken over, especially the banks, right? And the bioweapons labs. So this theory, yeah, the devil theory, I call it. And I explain in the newsletter the details and the implications. I think the Scientologists believe in this theory as well. They have a theory that the devil, yeah, was an ancient alien who is actually in a cave in the Pyrenees under lock and key, but maybe he's got out, and maybe he's now, you know, rampaging around doing biowarfare because he doesn't like humanity at all. That might be the Scientologist view. I wrote a book called Comparative Diabology, Western Esotericism, and Conscious Illicitude, which I published a couple of years ago, which goes into the devil image in all the world religions. And I proposed this new branch of religious studies called Comparative Diabology. Nobody's really done that before. It seems to me overdue that we have a study of the devil image in all the religions and all the philosophical traditions. There's the famous saying of Voltaire. Did he believe in the devil? He was a Freemason. He was a, you know, Reformed Christian, Catholic, Universalist thinker. And on his deathbed, the local Jesuit priest had started coming into his house all the time, playing chess as he was dying. Well, no, in the months before he died. And then, and they got on very well. Voltaire wasn't going to convert, you know, and have, he'd gone beyond the official church. He was a member of the Lodge of the Nine Sisters, of Freemasons. Anyway, the Catholic priest tried to get him to repent on his deathbed. He's dying, and said, "Do you repent of all your sins? Do you repent of the devil and all his works?" And Voltaire said, "My dear friend, I don't think now is the time to be making new enemies." You know, it's an example of Voltaire's wit. Interesting quote. In one of Voltaire's writings, he writes about a druid who goes to hell. It's a little short playlet. This druid, who's a Gaul, goes to hell and discovers he's, you know, being punished for stuff. But then he's rescued by Orpheus, who kindly comes down and rescues him as a brother, you know, recognises one brother to another. And it's interesting, Voltaire wrote that, because Orpheus was from Thrace. The Thracians were influenced by the Celts. The Celts were living in that part of Thrace. And the ideals of Orpheus, Orphic philosophy, are quite druidical, actually. I've gone into this in my Encyclopedia of Druid Studies. So Voltaire was right, you know, the Druids would have been rescued if they're in hell by this Orphic figure, Orpheus. So I don't think Voltaire believed in the devil in that literal sense. He'd be more on the rationalist, sort of allegorical, Jungian type of tradition, which I think is more my tradition as well. But anyway, there it is, option number 6. And then option number 7 is the don't knows. You know, there's a couple of billion of us, and I think I'm in that camp. I don't know which of these options is true. And I'm not even sure which one I want to believe in. You know, I don't, yeah, I haven't decided yet. You know, I'm not sure I want to believe in a God of nature that thinks wiping out 500,000 people in agony is necessary. I'm not sure I want to believe in any of the others either. So please, you know, enlighten me. Send me a postcard. I mean, I suppose the one that I would find the least upsetting would be the accidental leak one, because that would be human-made, so we can explain it. Ignorance. It got out by accident. It wasn't deliberate, and you know, that would then kind of validate my peace research colleagues, who've been saying for years we should clamp down on these weapons and we should outlaw them. And I think that if that one is true, which is number 2, then these labs should be shut. You know, I mean, we're all on lockdown as a planet. I think these bioweapons labs should be on lockdown, and their budget should be stripped, and all the people that have been working in them, including Portendown, should be interviewed by senior officers in the World Health Organization in association with the Bioweapons Convention team in Geneva, and they should go through every single bioweapons facility on the planet and say, did you accidentally leak this coronavirus thing? That's the scientific way to find out, with the support of the national government in each case. And so, you know, I'm actually trying to find out now how that could be done, what authority the UN can bring to bear to insist on entry into Fort Detrick and Portendown and all the rest, and interviewing on the record all the senior scientists that work there and saying, have you been working on coronaviruses? Because as you will all have seen, 3 years ago the US government authorised working on coronaviruses as weapons. They've reauthorised that. Well, who's been doing it? You know, that information must be brought out into the public domain, and the UN, through the Bioweapons Convention Authority, has the power to investigate. Now, for that to be done, I think, I don't think I can trigger that by writing a letter to them. I think a state, any state in the world that's a signatory to the convention, and that's pretty much all of them, can trigger that investigation process. And under the convention, they have the right of entry into any bioweapons lab, including in the US, Britain, Israel, whatever. And they should do that immediately. I mean, I don't know why, here we are in week whatever, and so far as I know, they've not triggered that mechanism. But instead, the media's pumping out, no, it's all just natural. Well, we don't know that officially till we've interviewed these people. You know, the surgeon doesn't shut every option, you know, before the operation as to what's causing it, because he might be chopping off the wrong leg. You know, you look carefully at all the x-rays, you weigh and balance all the evidence of all 6 hypotheses, and then you act as a surgeon. Then you know which bits to cut off. I think there's okay, we're dealing with probabilities here, so you could draw up a probability of each of these 6 hypotheses, and you can then make investigative moves exploring these hypotheses to prove or disprove them. This is how Popper would go about solving this. Popper, the great philosopher of science, who I met and I heard lecture at the LSE, who inspired me, and he was a great, you know, philosopher. These are all scientific hypotheses in that they're all falsifiable, and some are difficult to falsify, because the alien one, for instance, we'd have to prove there are no aliens anywhere, you know, in any other part of the universe, and that would be difficult. It's a very big universe. But theoretically it's falsifiable. Or we could maybe prove there aren't any visiting our solar system. I think that would be difficult to prove given the huge numbers of sightings and so on. Right, so those are the 6 options. And as I say, I'm suspending judgment. We're all on lockdown. Give me some help here. Help me with the research. Read my newsletter. Do some work on it yourself. And let's work out the probabilities. And above all, let's get the Geneva-based Bioweapons Convention Authority to investigate the actual labs and ask them on the record, did they make this stuff? Because I don't think the national governments are gonna confess. I don't think we're going to get free, because we don't have a right of truth-telling under law in these chambers. We're never going to do it that way. Although the question should be asked, of course. And legislation should be brought in as quickly as possible to make veracity a legal duty in all democratic chambers. Or the planet, you know, we will be taken over by rogues and liars and cheats. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say about that. And, the other thing I talk about is my constitutional reform initiative, which I've spoken about before. If we're going to save the UK from breaking apart, my proposal is the House of Lords is turned into a federal Senate. The Liberal Democrats, the Labour Party, the Greens, the Scottish Nationalists, Plaid Cymru and so on. I think it would appeal to the majority of progressive opinion. The only other alternative is complete Scottish independence, which is the SNP's preferred position. I mean, of the two, I'd prefer a really, really thorough reform of the UK, so that never again could an English-only movement like Brexit, threaten the stability of our country. So anyway, you can read about it, it's in the newsletter. I also talk about the Conference on Peace and Nonviolent Action, just finished in Delhi, and give the declaration which we made, which I was, asked to write. And the conclusion of that is that we should be having peace, mediation, conflict resolution training in school, every school on the planet. I think it's absolutely vital. How are we going to get a peaceful world if our kids aren't taught that it's important and that we can deal with the negative emotions, bullying, fear, all that stuff properly? And so we have to have mediation services running in each school, and then training about conflict resolution and peace theory and peace studies and so on. And that would go into the horrors of coronavirus and what's triggered it. I mean, all these kids at home now, they should be studying peace studies and non-violence. They should be listening to talks like mine. And it always was part of, religious studies and ethics. But that has been so marginalised in schools. We have one lesson a week mandatorily in the UK. Well, I think that's ridiculous. And they force feed kids maths, 8 lessons a week. Maths is morally neutral. If it was a bioweapons attack, and that's what we're all suffering from, whoever did that was very good at maths, because you need advanced maths to work out genetics and how to make viruses and tinker about with them. They were useless at ethics, right? And that's my point. That's why we need 8 lessons of ethics, philosophy and religious studies. Every kid should be able to learn the periodic table in every school in the world, including all the Middle East, Israel, the Arab world, America, and they need to bring back philosophy into American schools, i.e. the USA, and France, where it's, because it had this secular enlightenment thing, it abolished religious education, fine. Don't have religious education, but have philosophy and ethics, which is our birthright, to think outside the box, to join up all the stuff. And for that you have to learn about religions, because most philosophy has been done within the rubric of religious traditions, like in Judaism or Islam. And each of the colours relates to that. Okay, so then I talk about the World Intellectual Forum, because I'm involved with this new body that's trying to bring the intellectuals of the planet from all traditions, all countries and all nations and creeds to come together and think through the problems facing the planet. Now, we've got coronavirus as a huge problem. Some of us have been thinking this through. I'm doing my bit. Gosh, intellectuals have a role to play in this, because we have to join up the bits. One of the things I find very weird in the research I've been doing is that there was this kind of planning event in New York where they apparently had a simulation, what if a big attack happened with coronavirus, and the World Economic Forum was involved. Bill Gates Foundation was involved. Now, some conspiracy theorists on the internet, or just join up the dot people, say that that points to somehow someone there was involved in the cabal that's done this. I suspend judgment, but I do think it's weird that the World Economic Forum was involved, but not altogether weird, because the World Economic Forum works on a pretty elite level. It has heads of state come in, and you don't get to go if you're just a normal chap. We're very different. The World Intellectual Forum is for normal, ordinary, people, because we all have intellects, we all care, and to be clever or and intellectual. You don't have to be a trillionaire or a billionaire. As I say, a lot of those people are morally ignorant and even intellectually challenged. Just look at Trump, for God's sake. No, to be a proper intellectual, you might have come up through the working class route, as John Lennon said in his wonderful song, to be a working class hero. And I've got George Harrison's book out on display. I mean, those were great people, the Beatles. They weren't, rich. I mean, they stumbled on richness because of their music and their message, which was love. George Harrison, yeah, they were kind of intellectuals in the end. And this book is full of wonderful quotes after he got into studying spirituality in a serious way, and ethics. And they would be utterly shocked at what's been going on. I'm sure Paul McCartney is, bless him. And even Ringo must be pretty appalled at I mean, they're probably all on lockdown too. So, yes, if you want to subsidise the World Intellectual Forum, Paul, drop us a few million, because we need support. We have a youth wing that is trying to do stuff about coronavirus, but, we need money to make the videos and things like that. So, it's doing good work, the World Intellectual Forum. I'm the European coordinator. We have active people scattered around the world. Okay, I also talk about the European Union Mediation Service project, which is going ahead. And I talk about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East in the newsletter, which I've spoken about before, my response to the Trump-Netanyahu peace plan, which now seems a long time ago, but it's still there on the table. And, coronaviruses come and go, but we need to make peace in the Middle East, please. And I've given a blueprint, which I've circulated to many colleagues, as chair of this Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East. I reckon, that could be used, that Trump peace plan, and then turned inside out, twisted about, shaken about, and turned into a workable document. At least it's something on the table, and I would say to all my dear Arab, Islamic and Palestinian friends, and Christian Arab friends in Palestine, use that document and correct it. Use it as a ground basis and then change the bits you don't like. I think then it could be the basis of a proper peace process. And Trump has said, look, it's not the final wording, we're happy to change bits. So take him at his word and go for it, and let's use that thing. I talk about the work for Britain and Ireland, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and also the work for Stonehenge. I talk about the Mary Magdalene Studies Association, which is an ongoing project into Mary Magdalene's life and works, and was she or wasn't she the consort as well as a close disciple of Jesus, and how does that work? How are you, what's a wisdom affair? This is interesting territory connected to France. We were going to have a meeting here on July 22nd, Saint Day. I'm not sure it can go ahead in reality now because of coronavirus. I hope we can get this thing cured, a vaccine found, and France can start up for business. But we've only got, a few months now. We might have to meet on Zoom. People are welcome to come, as long as their health is absolutely spick and span and all that. I can't afford to get coronavirus in my innermost sanctum. And then we were going to have another meeting in October down in Alette-les-Bains in the Pyrenees region. I'd love it to go ahead. I'd love that the coronavirus is nailed and sorted by then, and we can meet. Fingers crossed. Mary Magdalene and me and our team want those meetings to go ahead. So we've got to find out, who did this and then arrest the gang, if it's a gang. Or if it's negative aliens, just kick them off the planet. And I think Mary Magdalene and Jesus are high-level operatives in the spiritual world. If we invoke their protection, I think we can manage to crack this on the head. Italy reports 600